Welcome to The Other Side of the Table with me, Tom Frogger. Raising money in biotech, tech bio and life sciences is crucial and complicated. In this podcast, we'll sit down with specialist investors to understand how they see the market, how they assess potential deals, and the mistakes they see time and again that you can avoid. This time, on the other side of the table, I'm joined by Gian Seehra. Gian founded two successful biotech companies, raising around $16 million along the way before heading into the world of VC. During his time at QVentures and Octopus Ventures, he invested into Healthtech and Life Sciences companies, and now runs a business helping seed to Series B founders to secure investment. Across his career on both sides of the table, Gian's been directly involved in over $350 million worth of investment. So stay with us to hear his insight on tapping into the emotional psychology of investors, how VC KPIs influence the market, and much more. So, Gian, thank you so much for joining us. I'm really excited to talk to you today about all things fundraising and investment and all the things that you're doing every day.
Yeah, Tom, thank you so much for having me on. Excited to speak about this.
Yeah. And as I mentioned in the introduction, one of the reasons I was really looking forward to speaking to you, particularly, Gian, about this is you have been given a lot of thought recently to how to best support founders in their journey to raising money. Obviously, your background in VC gives you a perspective on that. But yeah, I think sort of coming at it from the angle of the founders as well is very much what we're trying to do. So just so that I give everyone the right information, just tell us a little bit about the business that you've started and the work you're doing at the minute.
Yeah, so really where it came from was a multitude of different things. It came from my own experience as a founder raising. I raised about $16 million for two biotech companies. And then also my experience as a health tech investor and a health investor at Octopus Ventures, which is one of Europe's largest venture capital firms. And when I left venture capital, I didn't really know what I wanted to do and was just really taking a kind of life crisis of really didn't know what I wanted to do. I thought I wanted to be a VC-backed founder, but then decided not to be.
Right.
And in my spare time, I was basically just helping some founders from my network, both health founders. And it was really amazing that, after about 3 months of working with them, very early doors, not having the level of knowledge I do now, I actually helped them raise £2 million. So one was about 500K, one was about 1.5 million. And I was like, wow, okay, there's something here. I really enjoy doing this. Now it's, I should probably think about doing this more, full time and thinking about how I can actually make a business out of this. And I was looking back and thinking about how hard it was when I was a founder and the things I didn't know and the things I needed to work on, especially before I was successful with those biotech companies. I'd started about 3 or 4 companies and failed them. So, and failed to fundraise. So I knew what side it was in that regard. And secondly, it was also my time as a VC and meeting so many founders and having to reject so many and seeing the feelings of what it felt like when I really wanted to invest into a founder and when I didn't.
Right.
So since then, I've been working on that for 2 years now and really kind of iterating on what founders need to do and improve and work on to actually have a successful fundraise, which is what I call building an operating system around it. But it's really just making sure that they do the work to be successful.
Yeah, makes sense. And yeah, it's very aligned with why we started this podcast, because I think sometimes seeing behind the curtain is difficult as a founder, right? Understanding how investors look at your opportunity, and they look at it very differently than you do.
Yeah, definitely. Investor psychology is such an important part, especially at the early stage and especially biotech when you're not going to get revenue for many years.
Yes.
It's not something in which it's not like private equity in which there's multiple years of revenue. They know exactly what's going to happen. It's very much an aspect of, do I feel that this founder and this opportunity is something I'm willing to bet on?
Right.
And once you understand that psychology, and a big part of what I help founders with is understanding that psychology, it completely changes the way you think about fundraising. It's not, here's my company and you should invest. It's, how do I create the perception that I am an amazing company and someone should invest into me.
Mm.
And when you realize that investors aren't really investing on data and it's not this logical process, but rather an emotional feel of, do I like this founder and do I think the thing they're
Yes.
building is great? It completely changes the way you think about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do want to come back to that, and we'll spend a bit of time on that viewpoint and how you engineer that perspective for yourself. But I always ask everyone that we have on about their view on the market to start with. And of course, we're recording this on the 31st of October. It'll go out a bit later than that. I got the sense that the market was somewhat warming up. However, of course, the world has changed yet again, and there's more things happening around the world. So what's your take on where we are today, Ja?
Yeah, look, I would say it's warming up compared to the beginning of the
Yeah.
year, but it's not warm. It's still quite cold. And I'll use an example of that, right? So this summer, so August 2023, I did a big, I live in Indonesia, but now so I went back to the UK for the summer, and I spoke to about 20 to 30 VCs just on coffees to catch up with my old network. And the biggest, I always ask the VCs is like, and again, this is something that you don't really know until you were in the VCs, but one of the biggest questions I asked was, what are your KPIs? And what are you most focused on? And there was a big reason why I asked that, was because that's the best question to ask about the market and where they're feeling. Because look, investors are driven by their KPIs. It's a 9 to 5 job. If they mess up their KPIs, they either won't get a bonus or they won't, get the carry or
Right.
they get fired, etc. So it's a big part. So during my time as a VC, during the booming times, like 2018 to 2020, and then obviously I wasn't a VC in 2021, but even more so, the KPIs were always how many investments are you going to make?
Right.
You need to make this amount of this, depending on the fund, you need to make 3, 4, 7, 10 investments this year. And your goal is to make that many investments. And as long as you do that, you're in a good position.
Yes.
Since 2021, so 2022, 2023, and it still was like that in August, the KPI shifted because of the way the market is. So the KPIs went from how many investments are you doing to don't worry about making investments necessarily. You're not going to be driven by that. I just want to make sure that your company survive.
Right.
The portfolio is important, and making sure the portfolio survives. And I want you to put a lot of time into the portfolio. So that's something that you need to realize, is that that's the reason why the market's a little bit less and a bit cold still. I think it's warming up. I think by January time it will be even warmer, and then hopefully by the end of 2024 it's back to 2019 levels. I don't think it'll be back to 2021 levels. So within this industry, right, where does it fit then? The best founders were always going to get funding.
Yes.
Right. So if you believe you're the best founder, if you believe you're building, a completely changing product in pharma or a biotech, whatever, you will get funding and investors will invest into you. So it's even more paramount that you prepare. It's even more paramount that you show that you're a great founder. But you need to realize that 2 years ago, you may have just about stumbled through a fundraise, and it may have, you may have just got through. If you're going to stumble through a fundraise, it's just not going to work. You have to be the best of the best. And secondly, you need to realize that it's just going to take a bit longer, because investors rather are just focusing a little bit more on their portfolio, so they're not as fast. And once you realize those two things, then yeah, I mean, I'm still seeing, I literally just recently helped a biotech founder raise $2 million. So that was in September, so a month ago. So it's still possible, still happening, but you just need to make sure you're the kind of top tier level.
And so given that shift in the focus that investors have, if you're not already one of the portfolio, so you said there that, the best founders will get funded anyway. And I guess some of that will be about, if you believe you're the best, you will come across with conviction, and also you'll just keep going until you get the money, right? You'll have enough conversations that will happen. But given the shift in focus and the shift in KPIs, as you talked about, how do you think investors are now looking at are assessing new opportunities? What are the things that they're looking for? What are the things that are important to them for
Yeah, I mean, look,
non-portfolio companies?
yeah. So look, it's literally that, right? It's because their KPIs aren't, oh my God, I need to do a deal, have to do a deal, have to do a deal. It's not, they're not internally what a VC would say is I'm not, they're not deal hungry.
Right.
But they're not like, I have to make a deal in the next 3 months, so I have to look for it. So they're a little bit less direct, I guess, and that's why, that again, like I said, it's going to take a bit longer because the speed of execution is less, because they're not scared about, crap, I need to make 1 or 2 deals this quarter, or I've messed up my KPIs. And that's why this is why cold emails are going to be even worse. They're bad already, but they're even worse now. This is why warm connections are so important, and why you have to make sure that you're creating the perception that you are a great founder, because they're not going out and saying, I need to make a deal. They're waiting for that one amazing founder, the best founder that they've met this year, and them saying, holy, I need to do this.
Yes.
I have to do this. I have to do this investment. And if you can make that perception, then they'll make the investment. But if previously, if it was more an aspect of they just want to get an investment done and they're just deal hungry, it's not like that anymore. And that's why you have to sit in the, wow, you're the best founder that they've met this year and they can't believe they've got this opportunity and they just have to work really hard at it.
So you've got to make it so that they feel this is something they can't miss out on, and that they will miss out if they don't act.
Yeah. And that's why preparation is so important, right? This is and this doesn't, it's not something that, you can do in a short time. It's not something you can do in 1 or 2 months. It takes 3, 6, 9 months. But if you can create the right perception in terms of your narrative, in terms of your network, and then also the process that you build and the communication, when you do actually launch that fundraise, you can be that founder. But unless you are, a founder that's already made $2 billion biotech companies, you're probably not, you're going to probably have to do this,
right?
Because you're not one of those founders and you need to prepare in the right manner.
Yeah. And most founders don't have that track record, right? And the ones that do, they don't really need this advice. They're probably not listening. But
yeah, I mean, look, I'll use an example. It's not in biotech, but everyone knows Alex Chesterman, right? Or they should know in the tech world. He's the guy who made Love Film. He is a founder of Zoopla, which is obviously a $1 billion+ company. Love Film was 500 million or something like that. I can't remember the exact number. So very seasoned entrepreneur, probably one of the best entrepreneurs in the UK. When he came to us with Kazoo, which ended up being a $1 billion company, he was such a seasoned entrepreneur. He came to us at Octopus, a tier 1 fund, and gave us a term sheet for £30 million and said, sign it. So look, if you're a top level, if you're the best, one of the literally top 5 entrepreneurs, tech entrepreneurs in the UK, which he is one of them, you can do that. Most founders can't do. I couldn't do that, even if with my experience. So you do have to make sure you're doing the right preparation in how you build your network and getting warm connections, how you think about your narrative, how you're perceived when you get introed, to make sure that you come across as an amazing founder, even if you don't have the previous track record of someone like Alex Chesterman.
And that's interesting, because I think even some founders don't prepare enough, full stop, right? But even the ones that do prepare, I think they tend to prepare the story around their business, right? And their technology and what they're doing, rather than necessarily, unless they get good advice, of course, rather than necessarily around themselves. So when you talk about being a really good founder, being a top tier founder, are there particular things that mark someone out as that if they don't have that track record, perhaps?
Yeah, look, you don't have to have everything solved as a founder, right? And there's a lot of nuance. And being a best founder is a few different things. It's being strong-willed on your vision. It's having resilience, what we could have walking through walls. It's speed of execution. So what I see a lot of founders do is, they'll have a meeting and they'll be like, oh, thanks for the meeting. And they will then reply again or follow up a week later with half-assed information, right? That's not how the best founders work. Within 2 hours, they'll follow up with detailed stuff, all of the products, done, extra content, here's more information, etc. There's a few other things such as, coachability, there's grit, there's ability to communicate. a big thing that founders mess up on is they go too detailed into what they're doing and they can't be
Right.
clear. And if that happens, it's just a scrambled founder who doesn't really understand their market. And you may know your market really well, but if you're not clear to an investor, the investor will perceive you. Again, everything's about perception. They'll perceive that you don't know your market. And domain expertise is everything. And then the last one, which I'm forgetting the top of my head, which is very important, is what is it? It's not communication. It's, oh yeah, the ability to lead.
Right.
Right. And I think one thing that founders mess up on when they think about fundraising is they don't look at the questions behind the questions when an investor asks a question.
Okay.
Right. So an investor will ask questions around your business. And what most founders don't realize is they're never really asking questions around your business. They're asking questions around your business to understand how you as a founder react and answer. So is this founder communicating me in the right way? Do they know their market? Do they know their numbers? Are they confident in what they're doing? If I push them on their vision, are they going to crumble? If I push them on any of these things, how do they react? Are they great to work with? Do I like working with them? Could I sit on a board meeting with them? When we're, in an intro call, am I leading the meeting, or are they showing that they can show leadership qualities in a meeting by controlling the meeting and doing all the certain things? Do they have a right fundraising process, and is it structured? Because if it's not, it probably means they're unstructured in their work. All of these things, which, I know for a lot of founders are going to be like, this is so subjective and this is really hard and nuanced. It's like, yes, it is.
Yes.
And that's what investors are like.
Yeah.
And whilst they're asking questions around your business, and that is important, of course, they want to make sure they invest into the right businesses. A lot of it is tinkering with, okay, is this person trustworthy? Do I believe they're going to be great? Do I think they're going to execute? Do I want to work with them? And this always comes back to the founder. So whether they're asking you about your questions around your business or they're asking questions about you, it's all about you.
Yeah.
And you need to realize that when you're answering questions, it's really just a job interview.
Yes.
Secondly, on the company side, you're completely right? Like founders talk too much about their product. And they talk too much about the features in their product and what the features do. So biotech, this is the technology, and the technology does this. And look, that's great. It's important to have that, and you will talk about that. But what you need to do is make sure that you hook investors in to why they should care about the technology you're building, and why that, why it's so, especially in biotech, why that will help humans, animals, nature, whatever it is you're doing. Because once you hook them into, this is how we're going to change the world for the better, then they'll spend more time on your product and your technology and want to delve deeper. But if you go straight into, these are the features of my technology, it just becomes boring. And for investors who are having to see so many founders and they're not hooked, and then this founder just goes really technical instantly, they just don't get hooked and they don't want to spend more time.
No, absolutely. And there's a few interesting things I want to pick up on there. I think you talked about the questions that are being asked and the questions behind the questions. And I suppose I would guess, correct me if I'm wrong, that investors are not looking for a business that has no issues, because any business that's operating has got issues, right?
Yeah. Definitely.
It's about the honesty around those, and how aware the founder is of those issues and what they're doing to fix those issues, and that kind of stuff is more what they're looking for, I would assume.
Yeah, look, this is this is, again, this goes back to investor psychology and understanding the market. But investors know that this is incredibly risky. They know that out of a bet of 10, 7 are gonna probably fail, 2 are gonna be middling, kind of okay, and they're just really betting on 1 to be great, right? So to be successful in get investment, but to being successful in being, building a company, it's really about how can we make sure that the risks don't matter and the opportunity is exponential. So if they believe that you can get past the risks, they'll invest into you.
Right.
If they think that you are going to be massive and be able to return their fund and be one of those outliers, they'll invest into you. But if you mess up on any of those two, then they won't invest into you.
Yeah, that makes sense. And then that second part, I suppose, is about painting the picture of that impact, as you talked about earlier, because you've got to have a commercial model, right? You've got to have a viable plan as to how they're going to return their investment. But the reality is that's probably going to change over the course of the business's life. But if you're solving a big enough problem and creating enough impact, the commercial side of it, as long as you're smart about it, will look after itself, right? If people want the product and need the product enough, whether it's biotech or whatever, you'll make money out of it.
Yeah, Tom, look, you're so right. This is especially within health and biotech, but it is with every single, venture backed company. But especially for biotech and health, the biggest obstacle is commercialization.
Yeah.
So investors know this, right? And you're completely right in that it's probably going to be wrong. Most of the numbers are going to be wrong until Series B plus. Everything's going to be wrong. Investors don't care about the numbers. They don't necessarily care about the commercialization route unless they've been burnt or they think they know what they're doing. What they care about is a founder who is confident in their commercialization strategy. And the biggest thing that I saw as a biotech investor, and then also now helping biotech founders, the biggest thing I see is founders are not confident and they don't believe in their commercialization.
Okay.
So again, the question behind the question is, like I just said, when an investor pushes on these stuff, you realize they don't really believe in it. They don't really know the numbers, or they don't really trust themselves.
Yeah.
And then that's just a complete off, because again, the biggest reason why these companies fail is they fail commercialization.
Yes. Yeah. And do you think that's an experience thing a lot of the time, or just maybe a lack of, are they too scientific, a lot of these biotech founders? What do you think?
Yeah, it's definitely too scientific.
Yeah.
And not spending enough time with the right people to get an expertise on what that commercialization looks like. If you don't really speak to pharma people and you haven't gone down that route because you're just thinking, well, I'm still going through trials and I'm not going to need that for a few years, but then you don't understand how it's going to work.
Yes.
So what? You're making a great technology that maybe is going to help people, but there's been many technologies that have happened like that where their founders then got to commercialization and it just didn't work in the health system, right?
Yeah.
Either pharma didn't want to take or whatever, it just didn't work. And the companies failed, right? And every single biotech or health investor in their portfolio have at least a handful of companies that are exactly like this.
Of course.
Where the product worked, went through regulations, and it fell flat. No one bought it. Again, maybe because of the founders, or maybe because just the way the product is in terms of the way it works within the industry.
And it's an interesting point, isn't it? Because everything is good. I work with companies that are in drug discovery and preclinical development all the time. So they're so far away from the market that, as you say, a lot of the time they don't really have even half an eye on it. And the goal is always get it approved, but then you've got to sell it afterwards. And there's very little.
And again, it doesn't have to be right? Whether it's licensing, whether you produce it yourself, whatever it is, you just need to be confident in what that's going to be. And as long as you can perceive, you can make people perceive that you're confident and you're knowledgeable and it's going to work, even 5 years down the line, once you've been regulated and it changes, the investor's not going to be like, oh, it's changing. It's going to be, what's the best way to do this?
Yeah.
And I think that's where, well, not even I know that's where a lot of founders mess up on, is they just don't know what it is. They say it's, it could be any of these three.
Right.
Rather than, we think it's going to be this one, and this is why we think it's going to be this one. However, there's also these other ones potentially, but this is the one we think it's going to be.
Yeah, makes sense. So it's almost better to be confidently wrong, as long as you can show you're open to feedback and all that kind of thing.
Yeah, look, every single company is going to have many ups and downs.
Yeah.
Investors know this. And it's about making sure that you are agile to change, you are looking at the right data, but then also being confident in making decisions. A big reason why, and this is again coming back to the speed of execution, but a big reason why just generally all companies fail is founders just don't action right, and they don't execute on the right manner, and they don't execute fast. So you not knowing what it's going to be, and not having a real succinct and confident vision or choice in what you're doing, it just comes across that you're unconfident. You don't know what you're going to do, and you're not going to make the right action at the right time.
Yeah.
And that's what investors are really looking for.
Yeah, absolutely. And then you touched on this a little bit earlier, and I'm interested to just get your opinion on it, because it's something that I see quite a lot, is that I think it's undervalued by a lot of biotech founders. Some are very good on this, but to make any biotech product work, even in a middling way, you're going to have to get a really, really, really smart group of people together and get them pulling in the same direction and engaged in what you're doing, and get them to stick with you and get them to see it through and get them to overcome challenges and all that kind of stuff. And that's all about leading that group of people, right? And it's not an unchallenging group of people to lead. But I do think there is sometimes a sort of undervaluing of the ability to lead people by those founders. I don't know if you see a lot of that.
Yeah, and again, it's because they've never had to scale companies, right?
Yeah.
A lot of them are PhDs who, maybe had one person underneath them to help them with their research. But it is, and again, being a founder is not something you have to have completely solved to get funding.
Yeah.
You can be very green and very new. It's just about making sure that you're confident of, what you're going to need to do to lead, right? And this is simple stuff such as like, what does the hiring look like? How are you thinking about hiring? How are you thinking about your values? How are you thinking about culture? These are things you can learn and read about and have some semblance of insights around when someone asks you.
Yeah.
And then on the second thing is, these are very nuanced things, but how you conduct yourself in meetings and showing that you're a leader.
Yeah.
A simple thing like controlling the room or, dismounting on a call is all these things are the things that show that you can be a leader.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Gian, it's been really great to talk to you about this. You've probably touched on this already, but I do always ask to wrap things up. The biggest mistake that you see founders making when they're going out to raise money, what do you think that would be? I'm sure there's a few.
Yeah, so I would say the biggest thing is you don't know what you don't know. Right. And I would say the biggest thing that founders fail within fundraising is they don't know what work they need to do. So a lot of them, unfortunately, I don't know where they're looking, to be fair, but most of the time they just think they need a pitch deck and some investment materials, and that's all they need. Whereas that's not even 5% of the work you need to prepare.
Yeah.
And there's so much more stuff that you need to do, such as, building out a list of supporters and connectors, mapping out what, the investors you want to reach out to, how you get to warm connections, to, thinking deeply about why you're building your business and what that looks like, and why that, how that creates into a founder origin, all the way into, what is your startup vision story and how can you hook someone into it, and building in that core narrative to all of the different stories that you need to play into to make sure that you answer the questions right. And then all the things around investor psychology and communication and all of these things. These are things that, unfortunately, you don't know what you don't know. And unfortunately, founders just don't know the work they need to do. So they focus on the things they do know, which is usually, again, 5% of a market of successfully fundraising. And then they get to fundraising and they realize they haven't done the work. And they're panicking and they're anxious and they're not getting the meetings, etc.
Yeah. Okay. Fabulous. Gian, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much, Tom.
Thanks for listening. Outside of hosting podcasts, I'm the CEO of a company called Singular. We work with biotech businesses from seed to Series B to help them build a brilliant culture that delivers on their milestones. Come check us out at www.singular-biotech.com, and I'll see you next episode.